Do you believe that our educational system is on the brink of catastrophic collapse?
I think it's already collapsed. I think, the outcomes that you just inventoried is evidence of a utter collapse of the system. We can fix the system, but you need to do something disruptive.
Which, of course, takes money. And I want to talk about money. When your uncle was president, he seemed to have the idea that a lower tax rate brought about a higher tax revenue. What's your view on that?
I'm not going to raise the tax rates in this country. I may switch around some of the tax burdens to incentivize the best behavior, but I'm not going to raise taxes. We want to lower tax rates as much as possible. We have a $34 trillion debt, and we can't just print money. I saw President Trump on your show, and it was a very amazing, and it was an amazing show, and I think you really bring out the best in people. And I know that's your objective, but he was talking about how strong the economy was during his administration, but he printed $8 trillion, which is more than all presidents combined from George Washington to George W. Bush in 283 years of history. So it's pretty easy to produce the illusion of wealth if you're stealing money from future generations, and printing money like that is just theft. That can't be our solution.
How much has the Biden administration printed?
$6.3 billion today, but they will beat President Trump. Yeah, that's right. What's wrong? And it's addiction to war. It's the chronic disease epidemic, the biggest cost. That's costing us $4.3 trillion. We have to end that. We have to, or we're dead. It's 4.3. It's 5 times our military budget. We've gone from 6% of GDP to healthcare to about 18%. And 6% when my uncle was president, 18% today, and it's growing exponentially. And we spend more on healthcare than any other country in the world, 2 or 3 times per capita with the Europeans, and we're 79th in health outcomes. We're behind Costa Rica, we're behind Mongolia, we're behind Cuba, we're behind Nicaragua.
How is that even possible? There are 50 countries in the world where a mother has a better chance of surviving childbirth than America. 51 countries in the world where the infant has a better chance of surviving than America. America! Yeah. How is that possible,
when
Robert?
you and I were kids, we had the best healthcare system in the world, bar none. Today, we have the worst. We have extraordinary doctors in this country, extraordinary, that are doing things that are incredibly innovative. But we have the worst health outcomes. It's because of chronic disease. And we've got to figure out what's causing it, eliminate it. We have, and it's not rocket science. It's glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup. It's neonicotinoid pesticides. It's atrazine. It's PFOAs, the forever chemicals that are in all of our child's pajamas. They're in our furniture. I've litigated on them as well. It's high fructose corn syrup.
These other countries don't have that?
No, if you want to drink a Coke, drink a Mexican Coke, because they don't allow it down there. There's 1,000 ingredients in our food that are banned in Europe. And we're poisoning, we're mass poisoning an entire generation of kids. These kids are obese. It's not because they suddenly got lazy. It's not because we're mass poisoning them. And I, as president, I'm going to put an end to that. I'm going to say we're going to give drug development and infectious disease a little break for 8 years. And we're going to find out why our kids are the sickest kids in the world. Find out why they have diabetes, why they have asthma, why these exponentially here better, larger than any other country in the world.
How do you do that? Everybody wants to hold on. They don't want to get smaller. They want to get bigger. And it's government's going to fix everything. Let's get more government. Let's get bigger government. Let's fix everything.
You have powerful industries like high fructose corn syrup that has millions of farmers and who've been sucked into that industry. Those companies have on their payrolls the chair of all the agricultural committees in both houses, and they own the USDA. So the question is, even if you found out that high fructose corn syrup was the cause of a large cause of the obesity epidemic and diabetes epidemic, could you do anything about it? But with China, we need to take the steps to diminish our vulnerability to China. Do I think that we should be looking for a war with China? No. I think that we need to de-escalate tensions with China and understand that China wants to compete with us. They want to dominate the world, but they don't want a hot war. We spend 3 to 4 times what China does on our military budget. And China relies on, Walmart. They rely on Mideastern oil, which we could cut off. They don't want a war with us. But they do want to compete with us, and I'm not scared of competing with them economically. We need to start projecting economic power abroad rather than military power.
Well, but it's hard for a corporation in America to compete with a government in China because they have forced labor. They don't worry about human rights. They have people working for 47 cents an hour in factories making gloves that we're buying for PPE. How do you compete when you have a free market corporation with minimum wage, human rights considerations, which all should be true, with a government that doesn't have those concerns?
Yeah, I think we need to have fair trade policies rather than free trade policies. Free trade is just a race to the bottom. And that's what, our government officials and trade negotiators have been doing for the past 30 years, is signing agreements that put American labor and American environment at risk and allow those governments to cheat. I don't think that we should do that anymore. When I'm president, we're going to stop doing that.
What are you going to do domestically with these people that are pushing DEI policies and this concept of equal outcome in place of a meritocracy that has made America what it is today?
I believe in equal opportunity, not equal outcome. I'm, against those to the extent that that's what those policies are advocating. I'm dead set against them.
And how do you get that into the mindsets of our university that's preparing the next generation to take over this country? We have universities, particularly our elite universities, that are failing to teach critical thinking and have students that are celebrating Hamas. I've seen and heard things on college campuses I never thought I'd see and hear in my lifetime. The anti-Semitic rhetoric. I've been to Israel. I've seen what took place there, and I see American students celebrating. At first, it was Palestinians, Gazans. That was a thin veil. Then it's just straight up Hamas. And I'm thinking, I can't believe my eyes. I can't believe my ears. And I've said so quite loudly. I'm wondering what they're teaching these kids if they don't have the ability to actually evaluate what's taking place. This was a murderous invasion. What do you do to change the university environment? And what do you do to try and get these universities to have some balance in what they're doing? There's a difference between free speech and actually intimidating Jewish students to the point of fearing for their lives and their safety.
There are so many things that I hear about, Israel being an apartheid state. There's ethnic cleansings taking place all over the Mideast, but people only complain about Israel. Palestinians have all the rights that Jews have. Palestinians can vote. They can serve they can serve in the Knesset. There's a dozen Palestinians in the Knesset. There's nothing like that in any of the other surrounding countries.
That's not apartheid.
This is the only democracy in the Mideast. It's the only place where there's freedom for gays. They hang gays in Gaza. They hang them in Tehran from cherry pickers. It's the only place where women have any rights in the Mideast. And it has freedom of expression, it has freedom of worship, it has freedom of the press.
Would you continue to support Israel?
Yeah, I think America needs to wind down military commitments abroad in terms of regime change wars, et cetera. Israel today is facing an existential crisis. Its actual existence is in doubt. And Israel is in a 5-front war. People say you should have a ceasefire with Hamas, and I would love to see that. Every death I see over there is heartbreaking. But how do you have a ceasefire? How do you have a negotiation with somebody who, in their charter, it says any negotiation with Israel is against Islamic law? I don't see how you do that.
Are you a lunatic?
No, of course not. I've had a long career with so many milestones that would be pretty unattainable by somebody who is a lunatic. I've won hundreds of cases. I've written dozens of best-selling books on different issues, and I have good relationships. All these, so I feel like I'm defending myself and proving that I'm not a lunatic, which of course is never a good sign.
And I am baby boomers, and that's why I wanted people to hear you talk about the things that you've talked about, because you make a compelling argument for the things that we've talked about, and I've endeavored to give you every opportunity to clear up any misperceptions. And I think you've done an amazing job of doing just that. I don't tell people get out and vote. I'm not the guy that does that. I say, do not get out and vote. Get out and make an informed vote. Don't just get out and vote a ticket. Know who you're voting for. Find out what they stand for, what they really think, feel, believe, and are committed to, and then make your vote. And that's why I love this long form thing, so people can find out. I didn't just read a headline about Robert Kennedy Jr. I listened to and they will listen to this top, side, and bottom, and usually more than once. Is there anything we haven't talked about that we should?
Well, I have the highest favorability rating of any of the people that they've polled. So given a choice, people would rather vote for me, and they would rather vote for a candidate that inspires them and that gives them hope for our country and for their future, for rebuilding the middle class, for ending this debt crisis, et cetera, and winding down the wars. But many of them say that they're going to vote for President Biden because otherwise Trump will get elected. So it's out of fear. And the same is true to some extent of President Trump. People say, we got to keep Biden from getting reelected. So they're relying on fear to get the other one elected, and the division, and that amplifies that division, because they can't solve that division that is really critical that we need to solve right now, because they feed on it and they profit from it and they rely on it. They rely on you hating the other guy. I just say, let's talk about the issues that we all agree on, because that's how to make America better. And if I can get people to vote out of hope, then I'll win the election. If they continue to vote out of fear between now and November, then I'm going to lose. One of the big, I think, defamations about me is that I'm anti-vaccine, which is what people have said about me for 20 years. And I've always said I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm fully vaccinated myself, not with COVID. All my childhood vaccines, my kids were all fully vaccinated. And my issue is, like every medicine, vaccines cause injuries. And we know this because the vaccine courts have paid out billions of dollars. The other thing they say is that we shouldn't talk about them because, it will harm public faith in the program. And that is where I differ. I think no matter how rare they are, that we need to take care of people who are injured. And that's the group I, am concerned about. And there are a lot of people who say, when I try to talk about this, I get gaslit, I get marginalized, I get vilified, I get my job taken away. And I think that's wrong. This is a product. It's the only product that you can't sue. So, vaccines, as you know, the Vaccine Act passed in 1986. You can't sue them if you're injured. So there's silence about injuries. What I say is, if they know they can be sued, they behave better. The four companies that make all 72 of the vaccines that are now mandated for our children, those four companies have paid something like $79 billion in criminal penalties over the past 20 years for other products they make for which they can be sued. We should be particularly careful about protecting people who are injured. And that's all I'm saying. I'm never going to take anybody's vaccine. If vaccines are working for you, and God bless you, I believe in choice, in liberty. The government shouldn't be ordering people to take a product, particularly one that is protected from liability.
And they're getting paid for.
Right. But ultimately, my default position is always going to be freedom. and, freedom of choice. And we ought to be able to have the right to make informed choices. The government has shown that it's too corrupt, and its relationship with the pharmaceutical industry is too corrupt to trust them on these issues. We need oversight, and we need, safeguards. And that's my position on vaccines. It's not that we should get rid of them, and it's not that they're bad. It's just that let's take care of the people who get injured.
So you want more transparency.
Yeah.
And if people want to take them, you recognize they do some good.
Yeah.
And people should have a choice.
Yeah.
But an informed choice. And I agree with you. There's not enough transparency about it. That's what you're after.
Exactly.
That's what I mean. There's a perception problem. I think a lot of my audience hasn't heard you talk about that before today. So I think that's been a very revealing interview. I hope you think so.
I really enjoyed it, and thank you for, giving me this platform.
Yeah, I think people are going to learn a lot, and I can tell you, I've been talking to my audience leading up to this, and I said, I want to know what really matters to you, what's important to you, and it comes down to the same two things. Safety. They want to be safe, and they don't feel safe right now. They don't feel mentally and emotionally safe. They don't feel physically safe. And when I drill down on that a little bit, that involves the border, and it involves criminality on the streets, and that involves border. And a lot of them have problems with the fact that we're no longer seem to be a nation of laws. People get arrested and turn right back out. So they don't feel safe. And the other is financial security. And if you look at all the way back to the 1940s when Maslow talked about the hierarchy of needs, it goes back to that. First was physiology, people wanting to survive. They want to be safe where they're not threatened and know that they can provide for themselves and their family. And everything after that, watch that third step, it's a doozy. That's what they're telling me. It's security, safety, and they just tell me, these politicians, they just don't read the room. They're asking us to meet them where they are. They don't seem to want to meet us where we are.
Yeah, well, that's my focus. And how do we rebuild the American middle class? More than half the people in this country are making $5,000 less than the cost of basic human needs, and they're putting that money on their credit cards. A couple months ago, we hit a milestone at $1 trillion of credit card debt. A guy at the gym yesterday told me that he just got a credit card bill charging 34% interest. If the mafia did that, they would be in jail for loan sharking. All of those companies are owned by BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. And, so it's just these mechanisms for shifting wealth upward, and they are strip mining, they are vacuum cleaning the wealth and the equity from the American middle class. They've declared war on the middle class in this country. We cannot support this country with an oligarchy of billionaires. President Trump and President Biden, during 500-day lockdown, created 500 new billionaires, and they shifted $4.3 trillion north from the American middle class to this new oligarchy. You can't sustain democracy if you've just got a very, very wealthy above and widespread poverty below, and that's where we are in this country today.
They need to hear you talk about that because I'm telling you, they think he's a Kennedy. Kennedy's a wealthy family. It's American royalty. He doesn't connect with us, doesn't know where we are.
I mean, I've been sitting, at kitchen tables like that for my whole career. Because the career that I chose is representing people, mainly fishermen. My father, many years ago, he would bring us to Southeast Washington, to Appalachia, and he would bring us to the Indian reservations and to the Rust Belt. And he would say to us, and, we would go into people's houses and talk about how they lived. And he would say, these are our people. These are Kennedy people because, the big shots, they don't need the Kennedys. It's the people who, are struggling to make this country a great nation and are struggling with their day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
And they don't have a voice in Washington. And that's, what you're supposed to do with your life.
Robert, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Phil.
I'm really glad we did this.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.